I've got such a big list here. I'm wondering if I shouldn't kind of consolidate some of these and just make some mentions and then get to a main one. For example, Monopoly, Risk, and Master of Monsters for the Sega Genesis I played a ton of because of my Sega Nomad, which was basically a handheld Genesis, which was an awesome, awesome piece of technology because it was far above anything else that was going on at the time. The problem was it ate batteries.
It devoured batteries. I had one. I just got used to the fact that I could sit down on the couch and plug it into the outlet behind me with the power and just play it like that. Otherwise,
that's usually how I did it.
Playing it on the road, you better have 20 packs of AAA batteries because you're going to need them for every half hour.
Pretty much.
It kind of really takes away the whole point of a system being portable, though.
And it was expensive, too, so you put the two together, that's why it wasn't very successful, even though it was a monster of a system. Nothing else could match it until the Game Boy Advance.
Wasn't it $169?
It was more expensive than the actual Sega Genesis, yeah.
Yeah.
But that was just my side quote. I'm going to go ahead and mention Diablo 2. It was one of those games, it was one of my earlier PC experiences, and goodness, what a place to start. To this day, the servers are still open, there's still thousands of people playing it, and I think that alone says something about a game. All of the randomness, all of the variance of loot, I wouldn't say the gameplay was ever balanced. There was always powers that were more powerful than others, there was always characters that were more suitable for certain styles of play than others. I never got into the PvP, and I played alone most of the time, because back then I was on a 56k modem, and everybody else was having the early days of cable and DSL, so me playing a game with somebody was kind of a torturous experience for him, so lots of Diablo 2.
Now, did you have previous experience in the series, or was Diablo 2 your introduction?
I rented Diablo for the PlayStation 1, and I didn't really care for it. I actually liked the PS1 version better than the PC version. I don't know, it just didn't grab me at the time.
Yeah, I actually had that. I have since lost it, which is incredibly upsetting because it was worth some money.
Yes,
I have absolutely no idea what I did with it. The only thing I can think of is that at one point I had 2 or 3 copies of the PC one, and I don't think it's likely, but it is possible that that got mixed up in it somehow, and I just chunked it because PC is not worth anything, and 2 or 3 copies of it.
It got to be almost like those AOL discs. They were just everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even when you tried to buy Diablo 2 there for a while, they would come with it. Yep. It's like, I've already got this game. Trying to play Diablo 1 now, it's not a bad game. Diablo 2 is just so much better.
So continuous on this clock of roundness, this table of this.
Before I go my PC route, I'm going to give a couple honorable mentions also. I played the mess out of Bubble Bobble when I was young, and I played a lot of Battle Cars on Super Nintendo with Luke. It was another popular game right up there with Samant that we would rent all the time, and Mega Man X. For the PC though, Warcraft 2. I played a boatload of Warcraft 2, and me and Luke were so into Warcraft 2 that I would take, during school hours, I would take pieces of paper, and they had the map editor for Warcraft 2 back then, and I would just draw maps, because that's what we did. We would make our own map, and then versus each other on it. And so I would draw maps at school, and then translate it into the computer when I got home. And we would just fight each other on it. I think he was better at the game than me, but I don't remember for sure. I'm pretty sure he was. He owned it before I did, and he had a lot more playtime with it. And I've never been really good at RTS games to begin with. I'm good enough to play through the story, and that's about it. I tried playing... Oh god, yes. I tried playing StarCraft 2, the Versus mode on that when it came out. I got creamed within the first few minutes of every match that I played because people knew these little shortcuts. They had their build order down, and they had all these fancy macros, and I couldn't do it, so I never won. But Warcraft 2, I still love that game. I've actually been meaning to go back to it, but Pandaria beat me over the head with its content, and I just haven't had time. I will be going back to it probably within the next couple of months, giving it another playthrough.
So what you got for us, Grover?
Well, funny that we're talking about Blizzard games because I fondly remember when I first started playing StarCraft, and it was one of my first PC games because I started PC later on in my life. And the game really drew me in. I played the entire Brood War and vanilla without cheating, which most people say is an accomplishment because I know so many people would just type in "there is no cow" and just skip levels and cheat galore, which I did too. It was a blast.
I did
sometimes
the
just
second and third time too. Yes,
that got boring. What really kept me going in that game was the custom maps. I loved turret defense on the custom maps in StarCraft and in StarCraft 2. I still have probably 10,000 custom maps in my StarCraft folder. At least. And unfortunately, Windows 7 does not work for StarCraft. I cannot get it to work right. Otherwise, I would probably still, every other day, log in and play some turret defense with somebody on there.
Yeah, I hadn't played through the first StarCraft before StarCraft 2 came out, so I used cheat codes to get through it. I don't think I ever went through Brood War, though.
So you weren't completely caught up on the story yet?
No, sadly not.
Look at this list. I don't know where to begin. So there's games like Excitebike. I put a ton of hours into that. Gauntlet 2 for the NES and Gauntlet 1 for the arcades. Every time I was in an arcade and it had a Gauntlet machine, I would be on it. And then there was the Driver 1, way back in the day. Played that to death. It was probably because of that game that I hopped on the Grand Theft Auto games the way I did. And all of those, Grand Theft Auto 3, San Andreas, Vice City is definitely the highest hour count of all of them. Possibly even Driver. I'm not totally sure. I've had Driver longer. Saints Row 1 and 2, I put a lot on. So here, those may be a little more obvious in some ways. I don't know. But here's one that's probably going to make people's heads scratch, and I think that's worthy mentioning. Die Hard Trilogy. It was a game that had basically 3 games in it, each one based off of each movie. The third one was kind of a car chase thing, and it wasn't particularly well done, but The second one was a gun game in the Time Crisis Operation Wolf style of game, and that was actually pretty good. But the one I spent hours upon ridiculous amount of hours on was Die Hard 1, where you wandered around as McClane, shooting up stuff in this third-person view in the towers. And there was actually a sequel to this one, so I know it did rather well to have a sequel trilogy that did not actually exist. And I couldn't really get into that one too much. I did rent it. But yeah, so many hours just shooting up terrorists. And glass. So let's try to go one more round before we make some honorable mentions. Take it away, Mike.
All right, I'm going to go into the late 90s, pick a Nintendo 64 title. This is another, it was a multiplayer title, and there were dinosaurs in it. Turok Rage Wars. I'm picking this one over games like Star Fox 64 and Jet Force Gemini because even though I played those two so much, I actually have more memories of Turok Rage Wars than both of those. That's because it was a 4-player multiplayer game. That was really the only proper way to play that game. It was basically the Turok characters in a versus first-person shooter. Think GoldenEye with Turok characters, basically. And Turok weapons. Oh man, I have it. I have the box for it. I mean, I've got the whole thing, but I haven't played it since, like right after high school. So,
it's one of those games that hasn't aged very well.
No, not at all. When it came out, though, I bought it to play with my friends because they had it, and every time I would sit down to try and play it, I got my tail kicked. And I wanted to be able to play the game and not disappoint the other guys. Like, oh, there's Mike, just pick on him because he's easy to kill, so let's everybody kill him. Because there's always that one guy that everybody goes after in a multiplayer game because he's the easiest to kill. I ended up buying it, and I did get better at the game. Nothing special, just your typical 4-player shoot 'em up, but we played the crap out of it. Every time we hung out together, it was Turok Rage Wars.
Multiplayer games for the win.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Grover?
I'm gonna go as a puzzle game, and it's actually two different systems. It was 2 different names, but it is the same game. Kirby's Avalanche and Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine. Mm-hmm. They are the same game, literally. They're just one's on Super Nintendo and one's on Sega Genesis. The way it went with us is beating the single player became easy, monotonous easy. except for when it starts cheating when you put it on hard mode. But that still wasn't that bad. But as with the other games, multiplayer is what really made it fun. When all my cousins would come to my house, we would play Dr. Robotics Mean Bean Machine because I had the Sega Genesis. And then when we went to their house, we would play Kirby's Avalanche. And we were still doing this when the 64 came out. Nearly 6 years later, we were still playing Kirby's Avalanche because I remember my Sega Genesis broke and I moved closer so I was in walking distance, and every single night it seemed like we would at least put an hour into that game, just stomping each other into the ground on the game. It's one of my favorites beside another game which will be my honorable mention.
For my last one, it's kind of actually hard to go over one than the other, but this one has to probably make number 2 as far as hours is concerned, and that's Counter-Strike. The mod for Half-Life that turned into a phenomenon that just about every single first-person shooter has tried to copy or emulate in some form or the other since, to the point that it is still in championship play to this day. And there's been a lot of incarnations, as I have played the original, I do have Condition Zero, and I do have Source. So all of them have a lot of hours on them. They could still stand on their own, but combined, they're right up there with Minecraft easily. Because it was one of those kind of games where if you have an hour for hour to kill and you just wanted to shoot things, and even when I still played it online with my horrible 56K, I did rather well at it. And I think that's probably something else that helped carry me through it, that no matter how badly I felt I did, I still did above average. And that always helps a game out. Especially a competitive one.
Yeah.
You said there's a lot of cheating in it though, right?
Getting your butt stomped in first-person shooters can really get you down after a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that's largely why I had to quit. There was just such a rampant aimbot going on. People looking through walls. And I'll admit, I did do it myself there for a while to try to even the playing field. Not so much the aimbot. I thought that was ridiculous amounts of cheating. Being able to see through the walls, see where these aimbot people were so I could avoid them. But that was pretty much the last month that I played it online. And I didn't like what I was turning into, so I wasn't much of a cheater.
Well, it takes the fun out of the game.
It just seems once you have to start hacking to counterattack hacking, it just breaks the game and makes it no more enjoyable. It just kills it.
So the final round begins, the honorable mentions. So what you got for us, Mike?
Well, along with Rage Wars, I mentioned Jet Force Gemini and Star Fox 64. But one Nintendo 64 game probably stands above both of those. That's largely because it's a Mega Man game. That would be Mega Man 64. And I don't name it because I played Mega Man 64 to death, but I also own Mega Man Legends, which is basically the same game. It's just, it's the exact same game, but Mega Man 64 had extra items. Now, when I played through Mega Man Legends on the PlayStation, I didn't really go out of my way to complete the game. I beat it. I didn't try to find everything, because there were hidden items and stuff that you could get. But with Mega Man 64, I actually hunted down everything that was in the game, and I was able to create all of the items, even the shield barrier, which was new for that game. And I did put quite a bit of playtime. If you look at it as the 64 game and the PS1 game being the same, I put in a lot of playtime.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and I did that with Luigi's Mansion on the GameCube as well, because I love that game. I'm so excited for Luigi's Mansion 2. I can't even tell you how anxious that it's not out yet is making me. It's like, I want to play it. Release it.
All in good time.
Yes.
That's a short list. Surely you're not done.
I'm kind of surprised nobody said DuckTales. I didn't
really play it that much.
I never played DuckTales.
It's so well known, but I think it's mostly for its music more than its gameplay. I actually have 2 copies of DuckTales. Because I already had it, and then I bought a bulk of games and systems from somebody that I worked with at Blockbuster back when I worked there, and DuckTales was in that bulk, so I ended up with 2 copies.
Capcom did Disney games really well.
They really did. They even did Rescue Rangers. I played that a lot too.
DuckTales 1 and 2, Rescue Rangers 1 and 2, Darkwing Duck.
I have that one as well. I haven't played that one, but I have it.
Shame on you. That's very Mega Man-ish. You should really get a kick out of that.
There was a point where I was so in love with Capcom because of Mega Man that anytime I was at a used game store, I would hunt down the Capcom titles, and if I didn't own it, I purchased it. So I ended up with some really bad games like Street Fighter 2010. I hate that game. And then I have some really good games, like a DuckTales. They did Little Nemo Dream Master as well.
Yes.
And did they do Trojan?
Yep.
I think I had 2 copies of that at one point as well, because I forgot I owned it and bought it again.
That was a tough game.
Yeah, I did find Ghosts and Goblins. I purchased it, and it's hard. But
it's a series famous for that. I don't know so much about the Maximo series, but
that one's easy. But